Ready to go, Sean?
Yeah. Anything else?
Nope. Let's go.
A lot of stuff here about his various. At this point, he started purchasing stock.
Hey everyone, my name is Mas, aka Eagle.
And I'm Sean, aka Troino.
And welcome to Scientific Drinking. This time, we're hitting up the Appalachian Trail. Again. Cheers.
Cheers.
All right, Sean, let's do this. So we're back at Unicoi. Might look a little bit different. It's a lot drier out here. It is cold. What is it? What's the temperature right now? 40 something? 45 degrees. But I won't be recording too much on the way up there. I'll talk when we arrive because it's just too damn cold and we arrive pretty late through the traffic. Alright, see you there. Didn't think we'd have time to stop and admire the view, but it's hard not to. Magnificent brownification. You can see for a long way. Back at it. Last night was the coldest night I've ever camped outside. Now that wouldn't necessarily be a problem, except that Sean and I are woefully under-equipped to deal with such temperatures. This is a 32 degree sleeping bag, and all I have is this fleece. Sean?
Yeah.
How cold do you think it was outside?
You might be right that it was in the teens.
Down in town, it was supposed to reach 20 something overnight. That's 1,500 feet below. So the wind was blowing hard. Look at what's at our feet here. It's like ice fingers sprouting from the ground. It's like the freezing of the ground pushed these guys out. And they're delicate, you know, you step on it and you break them. Anyway, that's enough for now. My hands are freezing. Still gotta get this tent packed up and start moving. And then maybe I'll be warm. Whew, so underprepared.
Home, and she gave me a prescription for the pads that you use, like the electrodes and the cream that you use, and then the device, and it was like a couple $100 for all this stuff. I'd rather spend all this money on a couple sessions of like therapy.
So from here, we started at Trail Mountain Shelter, 58.2, and we are approaching Swaggle Blue Ridge, so 61.8. So yeah, more than 2 miles.
We're fed.
We're fed.
We're medicated.
He's medicated. I got veteran grade pills ready to go. Yeah, it was cold as shit. I was gonna make more of a video this morning, but every time I reached to hold the camera, my hand would go numb. Frost is on everything. I have leaves frozen to my tent.
It's a beautiful day.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's too bad we didn't sleep too much last night, but we do have coffee. We'll make it work. So hoping for a minimum plan, 12 miles. Nominal plan, is that at 15 or so? Compared to last time, we were doing about 13 miles a day, I think was the average or so. But the problem is we ran out of daylight. That's not gonna be a problem because the sun rises at about the same time.
8-ish.
But it also sets at 8-ish. So we have a full 12 hours of daylight.
We're seasoned.
We're seasoned. We're single seasoned.
We set a pretty good pace during our first full day on the trail, especially considering we barely got any sleep the previous night. But even with the trail guide in hand, we had no idea what kind of surprises, both good and bad, would await us over the course of the next few days.
This morning was not as cold as last night. I mean, my fingers still get numb holding the camera for long enough, but it's not an immediate loss of sensation. Plus, we were able to sleep last night, which might be a culmination of being so tired and it being a little bit warmer.
Comfortable. It was more comfortable last night.
It was more comfortable. Today we should reach North Carolina. It's about 4.5 miles away to the border. Take a picture with the flag, and then we have a steep ascent immediately afterwards, climbing up all the way to 4,700 feet from a base elevation of around, 3,200 or so. So it's a pretty high climb and a pretty steep one. So cheers, see you in a bit.
Cheers.
So it's been so cold that I haven't hardly talked about food and Huel at all. Last night, Sean shared a warm meal with me. I took him up on it definitely because it was so damn cold, and it's been cold. And that's the thing, you know, drinking Huel when it's cold outside, using cold spring water, oh, it makes you feel even colder. So I guess that's the downside if you eat Huel and it's cold, maybe your thermal system isn't working. That's gonna be pretty miserable. Even so, something strange has been happening, and that's that I found that I'm craving Huel. Sean thinks I'm weird for that. Check this out.
It was a great view and the first of many on our trip. However, our first surprise of the hike was waiting for us just around the bend.
Quite a view. We worked for it though.
It would be our first curious encounter with what is known as trail magic. Generous supplies of food, water, and sometimes beer to hikers that are tired and exhausted after days of travel.
All right, so that's definitely a surprising day. John and I ran across a man named Tar Heel. That was his hiking name. He hiked the trail in, well, I'll let you see it in his own words.
I through hiked the AT in 1979. There was essentially no trail magic or anything else, or food or hostels or anything along the way. In the gap up here, I drove on the way down to Springer Mountain, put a black garbage bag that had onions and a 3-pound can of Denny Moore stew. And so when I came through, I went down there and picked it up. So this has always symbolized food here. So every year since 1991, with the exception of the COVID year, I've fed hikers here, and sometimes we feed as many as 200 people on a weekend.
Are you affiliated with any organizations nearby, or is it just you yourself
No,
doing
it's
it?
just me. I just started by myself, sitting on the back of a pickup truck. I had a pot, dozen eggs, package of hot dog buns, and hot dogs. Sometimes back then I might have 10 or 12 people.
Trail name?
Tar Heel.
Tar Heel.
Yes, well,
How'd you get that?
it was originally the Tar Heel blister. I walked on blisters for 1,400 miles. When the blisters finally went away after the 1,400 miles, I just dropped the Tar Heel blister, and that was just the Tar Heel. But we don't really publish it in anything, so generally speaking, it's a surprise.
He was really generous. He had sandwiches, pulled pork, beans, chips, cookies, drinks.
Oh, there was a table of alcohol.
There's a table of alcohol. Anyway, so we hiked another 0.9 miles from there on full stomachs, and tonight we don't have to make any dinner because he was generous enough to provide it for us. I'm trying to get out of the sun because I actually got a little bit sunburned since there's not a lot of leaves on the trees. It is 5:45, edit a paper, read a little bit of a book, study some Japanese, and go to bed. All right, so we've got hopefully 16.2 miles today, I think.
That's a lot of miles.
Yes, the problem is there's a shelter at about 11 miles. Then there's this gap of 5 miles where there's nothing. There's no water, there's no shelter, there's no camping. So it's kind of an ultimatum. The good news is that the trail looks like it's pretty smooth, not too bad.
Slowly undulating.
So maybe we can knock it out. I mean, we did 15.5 miles the first day, and we're about to have a second cup of coffee, so that's all we need, right? Yeah.
Never been on it.
As we approached the end of our very long day, another surprise waited for us, but unfortunately wouldn't be as nice as the first one.
All right, so we just climbed this mountain, and we were not expecting this giant steep grade, and it was almost straight up. It was like rock climbing. I mean, I wouldn't even describe them as steps, just like ledges. And it was a brutal climb with 40 pounds of pack on your back. But we weren't expecting it, and let me show you why we weren't expecting it. So this is the trail guide we've been using. Here we have all of the locations, their mile markers, descriptions of where water is. When you turn it like this, you can see this elevation map. And this is what we did today. We started at this standing Indian shelter. We followed that. And then over here, you can see it doesn't look like much at the end of the page. You flip it over and continue over here. And okay, you're at a high elevation, and then you have to come on down. The masters that did this map look really closely, and you can see there's this vertical line beneath the 2 M's of summit that you can't see very easily.
Arguably the most important part of that map
is the elevation change. And it's the lightest fucking gray.
It would be nice if there's like, you know, some red sections to let you know when it gets really difficult or something. But no, either way, we're at the 100-mile mark now. Huzzah!
Huzzah!
We got a great view up here.
As we approached the end of our 5th day with the remainder of our hike downhill, we continued drawing parallels between our hike and the upcoming mission to the moon. In both situations, we were almost entirely dependent on the food that we brought with us. The trip was physically and mentally challenging, and there was no easy way out once you start.
Right.
Tell me that thing stays there?
Here's the 100-mile marker. I expected something a little bit more meticulous. 100 miles one way or another.
There were practical lessons to be learned about what demands we place on the astronauts, based on our own experience during this hike in the woods, as Sean would be quick to point out, early the next morning over a nice cup of coffee.
Well, we were talking about like China, because you had weird China dreams.
Yep.
Unlike any other I've ever heard.
Yeah, weird China dreams.
Weird China dreams. Political China dreams. So that turned into me thinking about this upcoming space race we're going to be in with China, and maybe Russia again if they team up. Kind of worried about, you know, how we're going to perform in this race, because last time we spent a ton of money, but so we made the USSR spend a ton of money too. Mm-hmm. You know, we kind of bankrupted them in that regard. There's a lot of technologies going on Gateway that are very forward-leaning, things that you need to be able to go to Mars, like technologies for autonomy, managing limited resources, and making sure the crew's safe and all that stuff. I had this thought when I was on the trail today, how good it felt to drink water from my Camelback when I was really hot and tired, like that, just that slug of water, and how weird it would feel if you're part of a crew and you didn't have that certainty. You didn't know that you had copious amounts of water. And at one point, my water is usually kind of chilly. My brain went to this thing where it's like, well, what if you're an astronaut and you just don't have cold water? It's got to be hard to manage that mentally.
Right.
To make sure that all those little details that the astronauts need are thought of and taken care of. Like there's this food scientist, and she's passionate about them having cold stowage. There's people on the program who are kind of like, do we really need it? Is it really important? After these hikes, I always want to be the guy that's like, yes, it's really important. Maybe it's not the technologies we need to be working with. Deleting that habitat the US have a lot of functions. We had a toilet, but it was going to be like the habitation module. So now we're asking the logistics team, our team, to see if we can fill in some of the gaps, right?
Yeah.
Maybe the part we should be thinking about isn't the technologies. Maybe it's how we manage our missions. Because how can you go to Mars if you're willing to delete an entire chunk of your architecture that is critical to the crew's mental health and mental well-being? And maybe it's a bad sign that we're asking the logistics provider to do things like provide toilets, and you know, all these things keep getting moved around.
Right.
And the architecture keeps changing. And maybe that's a sign we're fucked.
We just come down this trail, and yes, yet another trail magic with hot dogs and coffee for this gentleman.
Right, here's your coffee.
Thank you, sir. And what's your name?
Captain.
Captain. Captain's out. You hike the trail too?
Nope.
Nope.
Little bits.
Little
not the
bits.
whole. I've not done all the way through. What do you want on your hot dog? Mustard. Ketchup.
It's amazing. First thing in the morning.
Never had coffee in my life.
My oldest brother was going over on the base.
Thanks, Captain.
Have a good one.
Bye. Here we go, Sean.
Refreshed with morning coffee and hot dogs, we soon entered the most desolate part of the trail so far. The area had undergone controlled burning not more than a few days before. When combined with a lack of wind, leaves, distant cars, or even birdsong, the feeling of isolation began to set in. The thing is, if we thought this was desolate, I began to imagine how astronauts who were surviving on powdered meals might feel on the surface of the moon without so much as a stump to break up the barren, rocky landscape. The importance of having a good meal to boost mental health when surrounded by barren desolation began to really set in.
That's more like it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is better.
Shit. All those coffees wasted.
And NASA, you have to agree, has been stuck in the same way for a long time.
It's just people are people.
Yeah.
I mean, people make mistakes. You can't ever get rid of it. On the way up here, we heard the news story about the vaccine company that had a batch go bad, and people were saying it might have been attributed to a human error. I heard a lot of people correctly say it's not human error. If mistakes happen, the process should catch it and mitigate it.
I wonder how much of those processes exist at CNSA.
I wonder, yeah, that's true.
They're making rapid strides forward like we did in Apollo. Is it because they're more cavalier about it?
But it's not like sweat houses, though.
Does China have more Apollo attitude right now than we do? And if so, is it possible for us to get back there because of the lessons learned?
Is it really a space race if only one person knows it's a race?
In retrospect, suggesting that China might have an Apollo attitude wasn't entirely accurate. China does things differently today than the US does or has ever done. And doing something that has been done before, even by someone else, is different than doing it for the first time.
Sean pointed this out to me. Hey there, got a little vineyard. Little troll guy, seen better days. You need a bathtub in that house, buddy.
Making wine for the end of our journey.
There you go.
Holy shit. Bartram was doing this crap in 1777. Way before the AT was even an idea. That's something.
China is able to build on the knowledge and success of its peers. Even so, there is a concern that the US may be too complacent regarding China's rapid progress in the field of space exploration.
Hey, buddy.
Overall, the concern isn't specifically that China has better technology or a more tolerant risk posture or better engineers. The concern is that the US, when compared to China, is less focused when it comes to manned space exploration.
It's like talking to a wall when you don't look at me. I wanna speak my mind and tell you how I feel.
At the beginning of the last day, we had a mere 5 miles to go. It's exactly how I imagined the Appalachian Trail would be when I first started hiking out here. I entered this hike with the goal of better understanding how a mostly Huel diet affected my body under strenuous conditions. But I ended up learning that a good meal can make or break morale during long trips. And if it were up to me, I wouldn't send astronauts to the moon without sending at least one hot meal per day with them as well. I'd also make sure they had access to cold water in case they needed it, especially after a long workout, which, as I mentioned in the last video, they'll be doing a lot of.
Behold, the knock. Only about 5 miles away.
Unfortunately, I don't make those kinds of decisions, but I hope that as we proceed with the Artemis program, NASA considers the importance of such things when all that astronauts have to look at is rock, shadow, and steel. For now, I'll take some time to make some memories about the beauty of the Earth, just in case one day I find myself out there in the black.
Coming up on the Nantahala Outdoor Center, Sean. It's a lot greener over here, as you can see. Most of the hike, it's been very brown, so it's good to finally finish off on a high note. A lot of pine trees here, a lot of new growth. But there we have it. End of an 80-some mile hike.
Thanks for watching this episode of Scientific Drinking. I hope you guys liked it. Cheers.
You ready?
So.